Hillary said something too. Hillary's like,
October.
something's coming in October, like warning us about something.
Today's October 1st.
Let's
right?
read that. Let's read that. So let's go through that. So Hillary Clinton, something will happen in October to distort and pervert. Kamala Harris, she's not even talking about anybody else. She says, I anticipate there will be a full court press in October. The digital airways will be filled. And why does it matter? Because the press, this is pro-Trump anyway. Interesting.
Really?
Oftentimes stories are put on digitally, then are picked up by, let's say, Fox and others. And then those stories are stories, so the mainstream press reports on them. And so that the story then takes on a life of its own. Is this the one, Rob?
Yes.
Of what she says? If you want to play this clip, I mean, her voice is amazing. Go ahead and play this clip if you can.
And I anticipate that, something will happen in October, as it always does. The Russians, as I said earlier, are very active in this election. We know the Iranians are active as well. Chinese uses TikTok, or they certainly did against Biden and for Trump. I think they're a little less pro-Trump right now. So you look at where people get their information, and they get their information largely from social media. And so the campaign is doing the best job it can to combat both domestic and foreign false disinformation. But I anticipate there will be a full court press in October. The digital airwaves will be filled. And why does that matter? Because the press that is pro-Trump anyway, oftentimes stories are put on digitally that then are picked up by, let's say, at Fox and others. And then those stories are stories, so the mainstream press reports on them.
Actually believe
Who's in the audience?
That story
Who pays
then
to
takes
come
on
here?
a life of its own.
Well, it's the
there will
Clinton
be
Global Initiative. It's whoever it's
concerted
her audience.
efforts to distort
You can pause
and
it here.
pervert.
Vivek, who's she talking to?
I think mostly to herself.
No, what I'm asking
They might
is,
have had a
like,
no audience rule there, too.
Who believes that, and who is she actually talking to about this?
So, look, I think there is an echo chamber on the left that is increasingly in need of believing the things that many more of them used to believe back in 2016. But increasingly, a number of other Democrats have been disabused of this mythology, right? You see a lot of the people moving from the center or the center left now even coming around to vote for Trump in this cycle. So I think there's a group of people who are kind of miss the solidarity they used to have in 2016. The idea of that Russia disinformation hoax, right? The Trump-Russia collusion hoax, that was something that people had a big attachment to. I even know professors, right, from MIT, other places who I knew back then, who for them, they weren't even terribly political, but this idea that somebody else is really colluding, we know something's wrong in the country, the idea of having a boogeyman to pin that on, that was really valuable. It filled kind of a vacuum in their heart and in their soul. And so when they were disabused of that notion, or most people were, there's a small group of them that still need somebody to be giving them that sense of the feeling they had back in 2016. That's the increasingly shrinking group that she's talking to right there. The interesting thing was, even Hillary Clinton might need some of that for herself. She still hasn't given, I mean, how many times would she go in an interview where she can't talk about Russia and disinformation from Russia when it was her own campaign? So let's actually just take a pause on this. Every time we've heard the message about Russian disinformation, let's do the pattern recognition. I'll do 2016, and then I'll do 2020, and then let's come to 2024. 2016, the alleged Russian disinformation and interference that supposedly was supposed to propel Donald Trump to the White House was actually domestic interference from the Steele dossier, Hillary Clinton's opposition research, that was laundered through the narrative of Russian intervention. So the real Russian disinformation was created by domestic disinformation laundered through Russia. That was 2016. Maybe that's a one-time incident. Well, then you get to 2020. Now you have the Hunter Biden laptop story, which contains probably the most damning information about a major presidential candidate ahead of an election that we've seen in modern American history. And that was systematically suppressed because, again, they laundered it through the narrative of Russian disinformation. So when she's talking about the idea of somehow Russian disinformation coming up in 2024, it makes me wonder what might be domestically cooking, because that's exactly what they've done each of the last two election cycles. And I think that in some ways, is she lying about it? Is she some sort of evil genius? I think it's actually none of the above. She, in some ways, is the same part of that psychologically needy group to believe in this grand delusion to fulfill some vacuum in their heart that they didn't quite have fulfilled back in 2016. I think it's a psychological deficit rather than it is some sort of masterminding plan, even on her own part. That's what I would say.
You go back to LBJ, and LBJ said, if I've lost Cronkite, I've lost the country. It was very famous. And he was talking about Vietnam and things were happening. And they used to have the mainstream media as their lapdog.
Yeah.
And absolutely. And so now what I hear John Kerry saying, what I hear Hillary Clinton saying here is they are frustrated in their inability to control narratives and free speech that are coming from other corners. But then, as you correctly say, they've had these convenient methodologies to rinse or launder, these scandalous things, and actually use social media to help do so when the mainstream media didn't go far enough for them. And I think that I agree with you on the psychologically needy thing. I think there is a lot of denial on, we can't believe we lost to this guy in 2016. You saw DePodesta when he came down to the ballroom and talked to the sobbing mob of her supporters. Remember that?
Yeah,
and I
John
believe
Podesta.
that they suffered the equivalent of a political nervous breakdown that night that they've never really emotionally recovered from.
Exactly.
Because we lost to this guy. We lost to this guy.
Yeah, but the part when she says we know mainstream media is mainly on the right.
Come on.
That is
when
her.
she says that is the gaslighting to just try to?
At the highest level.
Exactly. That's her just.
Who believes it though?
It's either denial or
Who
gaslighting.
on the left believes it?
All of them. I had a Manek yesterday with a guy that was self-proclaimed TDS. And he's like, I don't know what the... And he couldn't get out of it. And he's like, listen, even though what you're telling... I'm not even joking. In fact, this guy paid for 30 minutes to tell me, he's like, since them. And he's like, it's just embedded. They believe everything that she's saying, Pat. That's their golden goose. They still adore this woman. If they would have her as president in a heartbeat, but she's so unlikable every time she speaks. And that's why I was being funny about it. And you nailed it. The Clinton Global Initiative. What is that? That's not the Clinton Foundation. What is that? What is their global initiative? What is it? I don't even know what the hell they're talking about.
The Clinton Global Initiative?
Yeah, what is she doing?
That is
It's a very serious initiative globally.
That is their
Ran by
foundation.
Clintons.
About
Are you-
what? People disappearing?
I'm so disappointed by your criticism of this initiative.
But if you
it's,
had to,
it's basically like a Roach Motel for money. Money goes in, but it doesn't go out.
Got you.
Right?
Okay,
It's-
perfect.
if you had
Pretty good.
to,
Goes to private jets.
if you had to,
I mean, if I guess. If I had to guess.
don't say I wouldn't choose either. This is a binary option, just hypothetical, complete game here. Had to vote for Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris to be the president of the United States now, who would you actually vote for? Now.
Not if you're asking the question who's more qualified, it's not even close.
Yeah.
If you're asking who's more qualified for the left,
You're saying Hillary's more qualified.
it's not even close. Kamala's not qualified like Hillary was qualified to run, but she is that hated.
Yeah.
To have
yeah.
that stacked of a
Likability is not her best
resume, to
quality.
have that kind of a resume, your husband was a former liked Democratic president for 2 terms. And how do you screw that up? How do you go from having a president that a lot of people on the left say Bill Clinton's my favorite president? You'll hear people saying it regularly.
What's interesting is people should go back and listen to, for example, Bill Clinton's like 1992 campaign speeches and acceptance speeches, even for the nomination and his inauguration. A lot of what he would say back then is exactly what a lot of Republicans would and do support today. Welfare reform in the 1990s. Bill Clinton was, I mean, I disagree with him on a lot of things. Don't like the guy, obviously, the deep dishonesty and a lot of it I rejected. But as a matter of the policies that he advanced, even in the mid-90s, a lot of them actually are more pro-conservative by today's standards than they were even viewed as being back then. Welfare reform is a good one. And I would love to see, this gets back to that point about where I want to see the future direction of the Republican Party go, is we've got to go the direction of dismantling this nanny state. And I think that in many ways what's happened over the last several years is the Republicans have imported many ideas from Democrats into the Republican Party itself. That was the ultimate coup, actually, in the last 30 years, was not just the Democratic Party wielding more power or over the mainstream media. It's that many of those ideas have become blasphemy. What the Democrats used to be against, they're now blasphemy even amongst Republicans, like adding work requirements to welfare, adding, let's just say dismantling the nanny state of the welfare state, Medicaid. You could think about the regulatory state. And so what I want to see is a revival of a Republican Party that goes back and takes aim at that regulatory state. And the funny thing is, if you go all the way back to Bill Clinton's speeches in the 90s, but you put them in today's language, you would think it was a hardline conservative making those same statements, which I just think is pretty interesting, Patrick.
I don't disagree. This is why a lot of people forget about the Monica Lewinsky scandal. Set that aside. He was actually not a bad president. He was a guy that him and Newt were able to sit across from the table and negotiate and get some things done, right? And this is, what year was Newt's Man of the Year, Time Magazine? This is when they were man before they became persons.
late
This
90s.
is 94? I think he was the Man of the Year.
It was in the Clinton
Right.
midterm.
They were
right?
able to make certain
1995.
things work.
95.
Vivek, on this topic of sort of what the Republican Party stands at this point, you wrote, I read it all the time, thanks to Pat, Wall Street Journal. You wrote an article maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that was an excerpt from the book, actually.
It was awesome.
Thank you,
And
man.
the premise was the America First divide. Should the Republicans be more protectionist
Yep.
or libertarian
Yep.
in nature? Walk me through that and the different distinguishments between those two options.
Sure. So let me first say America First rejects the neoconservative, neoliberal vision of yesterday. Foreign interventionism rejects the idea that somehow we're going to make China a democracy by trading with them. No, that has failed. But for the America First future, what's the goal? The protectionist camp, and I think most of the prominent voices in America First right now, most of them fit this description, would say that we need to protect American manufacturers from the effects of foreign price competition. We need to protect American workers and their wages from the effects of immigration. That's protecting the economic conditions of the worker. And we should also make sure that we use the regulatory state. We use regulations in the Department of Transportation or the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau or the antitrust laws of the FTC. That we should use the regulatory state to advance conservative goals rather than liberal goals. The alternative view is the national libertarian perspective. That's where I fall, which is to say that no. We don't want to use the regulatory state to advance our goals. We want to get in there and shut down the regulatory state. You want to talk about trade? Well, if we're serious about declaring economic independence from China, and I am in critical sectors like the U.S. military, which depends on China, our pharmaceutical supply chain, critical sectors, if we're really serious about reducing our economic dependence on China, that requires, yes, onshoring to the United States. But if we're really serious about it, it also requires nearshoring to allies, Japan, South Korea, India, Vietnam, Philippines, and so on. But if you're truly in the protectionist camp, you'd say, no, let's trade with everybody, because that means American workers or American manufacturers aren't going to get quite the same high price. When it comes to immigration, my view is we need an immigration system that selects for your readiness to assimilate, your ability to speak English, your ability to know something about the country through civics exams, your love of the country, your ability to make contributions. That's one view of immigration, and we'd probably have less immigration in the near term as a result of that, but it's because it's based on the principle of what stands for pro-American values. But the protectionist view is I don't care about any of that. I just say, think if a company can hire somebody to do a job for $20 an hour versus being able to hire two immigrants to do the same job for $10 an hour, we should stop those immigrants from coming in so the American company has to hire the American worker. The problem is that results in fewer workers being hired. So the reason I stand for the national libertarian perspective, which is to say that I don't want to replace the left-wing nanny state with a right-wing nanny state. I want to dismantle the nanny state. That, I believe, should be the future of America First. The reason I say that is not because that's a more important goal than helping American workers or manufacturers. That is the way to help American workers and manufacturers for the long run. And I do see a little bit of a deficit, a little bit of a gap in willingness of leaders to step up and adopt those positions, which is why I've made that a big part of my book, which is why I'm actually going to I expect to fill that void in a bigger way, because I think that that's the debate we need to be having. Now, here's one thing I'll say about Donald Trump is Donald Trump does a good job of melding both of these positions. And for a leader at the right time, he's the right leader for the right moment. You need to build a coalition. You need to be able to draw from the best ideas from all camps. And so he's done a good job, and I think we'll continue to, for the next 4 years, do a good job of bridging this divide. But I think after Donald Trump, hopefully a successful second term that we're all rooting for, after that, I think that this rift is going to become pretty unavoidable. And I think the rift between the protectionist version of the America First right and the libertarian-leaning version of the America First right is going to have to be the choice. And I think that's where the future direction of the Republican Party, the conservative movement, the America First movement goes from there.
Some of you guys asked us about The only wallet that I wear. This is the wallet that I wear. This is the Valuetainment wallet that I wear. ID, cards, cash, easy to use. It's not heavy. It's not thick. It's not, and it's 100% leather. It is the only wallet you will see in my pocket. It's not a Fendi. It's not a Ferragamo. It's not a Louis Vuitton. It's none of that stuff. It's a Valuetainment wallet with the logo on the side. They're back, and here's what we're doing today, which I'm excited about. If you order one of the wallets, which Rob, let's put the link for the wallet. If you order one of the wallets that we have them in brown, we have them in black. We're going to give you the card holder and the keychain of Valuetainment sent your way. Price $99. The link will be below for you guys to get. And you can add other Future Looks Bright gear anyways, because the event we're hosting here soon that we'll announce, to attend it, you will have to wear Future Looks Bright gear.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.